Well, the truth is, I'm the only victim. When you say I've groomed someone, that's defamation.
Back in May, I had made a video looking into Khord Kitty, his rather dark history and controversies that had, in of itself, forged over 180 pages dedicated to him on Kiwi farms. At first, I wasn't going to make a second video on Khord, but over time and discovering more about him, I had realized that a second video was needed. When it comes to Khord and his history, he tends to rewrite a lot about himself, especially his history as a groomer. I do want to preface this before I start the video. Please do not harass anybody that I talk about with this video. The purpose of this video is to educate people about who Khord is and what he's done, especially since Khord has been trying to silence me as of lately. Before I really dig into this, however, there is something I want to address. In my last video, I have made a few mistakes. First, in correction. In my last video, I had claimed that Khord had ended up rooming with Growly at PogCon 2017. This statement is incorrect, as Khord was turned away by Growly. I will be getting into the whole Khord and Growly situation later. Second, in correction. I had stated that Foxler was currently on trial for having sex with a minor. Unfortunately, he is a free man. Last, in correction. I had stated that the trans doxing incident happened on April of this year, when in fact the doxing incident had happened on April 21st, 2020. In my last video, I had gone over Khord's various allegations against him. Some highlights being that he tends to silence his opposition, zoophilia, associating with zoophiles, Nazis, and pedophiles, and evidence of him grooming a 17-year-old CSA victim. He also has evidence of him being racist as well. However, this video unfortunately won't be a happy topic to talk about. I do warn that this video will contain some heavy topics such as zoophilia, grooming, pedophilia, sexual assault, and etc. With this video, I aim to try and educate people about who Khord Kitty really is as a person. He will try to claim that I am lying and try to silence me, but I have been documenting his actions and learning more about him. I know his habits, how he says something only to delete it minutes later, and claims that screenshots about him are edited or lacking context. The fact that he quickly claims that my video was full of lies, yet admits that there is some truth to it. The fact that he has gone as far as to speak for his grooming victim and shamed him for being groomed. But today, a darker part of Khord will be unveiled. BLFC, June 5th, 2022. Oh boy. Leading up to BLFC, Khord would be getting into a particular argument with the user by the name of Hopeful Gracidia on Twitter. Hopeful is someone who has had a bit of history in documenting Khord on his disgusting behavior and has composed a thread about Khord on Twitter, which I will be leaving a link for in my description. On June 7th, 2022, Hopeful had tweeted that Khord would be banned from the Pride Parade due to his transphobic views and opinions. But was that all that would happen to Khord during BLFC? Well...
waves, the glitchy wave! Our next dancer is Khord Kitty! Khord Kitty!
He did not have a good time during BLFC. A lot of people had come forward with who Khord is as a person, such as him comparing his reputation online to the fucking war going on in Ukraine, him being a pedophile and a zoophile, and also a user by the name of Toll stood up against Khord and wanted to do a protest against him being at the con. Another user by the name of Sammy K had come forward to say that Khord had personally harassed him and others as well, putting in multiple people in the community can come forward about Khord, yet he was still able to attend the con. Khord had featured in an episode of Straight from the Muzzle and had his episode removed due to his transphobic takes. Another user by the name of Fur had come forward to say that Khord spammed their work phone number when it was discovered that they did more cons in 1 year than Khord, which is something that Khord is very proud of. Another furry by the name of Tube had come forward, stating that Khord is banned from staffing a con dance due to him making a seriously nasty joke about suicide to a competitor. These screenshots show that Khord was absolutely not having it at all, but to be frank, Khord's humor is really dark. Not that it excuses his actions, of course, but it shows that even when Khord pushes his limits, he does not know when to stop. And before Khord tries to say that this never happened, I do have the screenshots to prove it. Also, a user by the name of Kizu had come forward to explain that Khord harassed this user's service animal at a con. Lastly, a user by the name of Kaya Queen had stated that Khord had been very weird towards a 12-year-old fursuit dancer at Califer 2016-17, named Zeke/Chio. I apologize if I mispronounced that. In which he was following the group around during a con. Screenshots are provided. Now, while the screenshots are pretty vague as to whether it was Khord or not, this is considered an allegation. But something interesting I do want to point out was that Growly was also around during the con. Khord and Growly have been friends in the past, and this image dating to around June 5th, 2016. And they are still friends to this day. He's been lying about his connections to Growly, who is a twice convicted sex offender by the way, for the past 3 years. When Khord had confronted everyone about this in the Khord Kitty discussion group chat, he was asked for proof that he wasn't hanging out with Growly, and he ended up spamming porn and memes. So, what is Khord doing with Growly? Going to movie parties, according to Khord. These meetups are the only place where he can be himself, and desperately wants to stay in the same meets with Growly. I am gonna go off script for a moment because I just remembered something off the top of my head. Khord came into the freaking group chat one time, and when we asked for proof that he blocked Growly, he ended up sending a video. And in the video, you can very clearly see that he has not blocked Growly. Now, in my last video, I have explained that Khord has had a history of pedophiles, but that wouldn't make him one, right? Well, it's a little hard to say that he's not one when, he used to have an Ink Money profile and followed artists who made cub porn, such as Mizzy Yam, Tricksta, and Lando. So, one of my favorite artists, Lando, a fabulous artist, put up a picture of a pregnant Lilo from Lilo and Stitch having sex with an adult man. Lando is not a pedophile. It also doesn't help that Khord was friends with someone by the name of Nick/Kalu Ferret. Kalu Ferret.
What in the goddamn?
Kalu Ferret. There we go. The zoo sadist I had talked about in my last video, being someone who was banned from the Bay Area Fermi in 2011 due to possession of CP, which we know since Kalu has had a history of drawing CP. Or maybe was it Khord's victim that sealed the deal. In my last video, I had brought up the fact that Khord had groomed a 17-year-old in 2014. Khord had very sexually charged conversations with a 17-year-old CSA victim when Khord was living in New York. On June 8th, I had gone to a bit of a spat with Khord about the issue. In his tweet, he had stated that he hasn't broken the law, and I had pointed out that he had groomed a minor. Khord then went to state, and I quote, "Grooming someone who can legally consent is an oxymoronic statement. It's basically impossible to do since all grooming victims are below the age of consent. So, the term grooming is not applicable. I've never groomed anyone ever. You should learn what grooming means." And also, grooming is literally pressuring someone into an illegal act. You can't sexually groom someone into a legal act. Then it wouldn't be grooming by definition. Stop lying! I have pointed out that at the time, Khord was 10 years older than his victim, which Khord had admitted to multiple times in the logs with the minor. Khord then went to state that I was lying, and stated that the victim felt comfortable around him, and that they were the legal age of consent the whole time, and that... Holy shit. She was not the victim! I was! I was defamed, attacked, and hacked! Educate yourself on what the word victim means! I then pointed out that there were times in the logs where the victim did not look comfortable around Khord, and that Khord, being a 27-year-old man, having very sexually charged conversations with somebody who was barely starting their life, and taking advantage of the situation. Khord then proceeded to try and report my tweet because it was sharing hack content. Then he also blocked me. Khord strongly defends his stance of there were the legal age of consent, therefore what I did was right, and basically speaking for the victim. He also tends to use maturity as a form of defense as well. I don't feel like I exploited her, because all I had from her was a friendship. A friendship that lasts till today. She was flirty, more domineering. I was more submissive, and I was going with the flow. Neither of us felt uncomfortable at all. I mean, she needs to be domineering. She was a proud black woman. So, all that being said, she was in control the whole time, and my goal was to make sure that I was as chill and normal as humanly possible. This was from Hopeful's DMs of Khord on February 2nd, 2022. Though Hopeful and Khord's DMs, which I won't be reading aloud all of them since there is a lot to take in, Khord would make several claims and try to defend them, but some of these are just blatant lies, and I'll be getting into it a little bit. Khord even states that the minor was flirty and would flash him. He's even told me in a call that he and I had.
But you want a screenshot from that particular timestamp, right?
I mean, I don't need a screenshot, but it's just like, I just thought it was kind of weird how they kind of were just talking about your prior reports like as if they'd seen it.
So the story behind that is, so when we were there in person, she flashed me, and then she said that she felt very embarrassed, and then I told her, would you feel less embarrassed if I did the same thing? And she said yes, so I did the same thing.
But here's the thing. Khord has been speaking for the minor and silencing them for 8 years. The victim had reached out to me and explained their side of the story, and I will be keeping them anonymous due to safety issues. From their side of the story, I had basically asked a couple of questions and allowed them to answer. What is your opinion on Khord Kitty? I think that he is very manipulative and narcissistic. How do you feel about how he's currently handling the situation? I think he's trying to avoid giving straight answers and trying to shift blame. Oh, I think him blaming the situation on my past self when I was 16 years old is beyond laughable. The way he was talking and defending himself in a text to people, as if I, at the time a 5'4", 16-year-old self, can somehow dominate a grown-ass man. I just don't understand, since he was the one who kept inviting me over to his place. He was the one who wanted to cuddle, and he was the one who was as bold as to give a minor a literal sex toy to use on themselves. I met Khord when I was 16. He lived nowhere close, and I had to actually take a bus trip to him that was over an hour. I'm talking like, if he texted my phone to come over after school, I'd come over. So I don't know how you can say that he doesn't associate with minors or anything. We literally were talking to a high school student. And he has the ability to endanger that minor, because there were times where he'd just invite random other adults. Don't get me wrong, it was his house, but again, these were random strangers that weren't fully grown and you were just introducing to a minor. I hope this isn't triggering for you in any way, but did Khord ever try to make you interact with these people? I mean, if they were over, I'd had to socialize with them, but I never got physical, thankfully. There was this one dude he did bring. Homie was very, like, I didn't know what cub was or meant till him, and there was one dude that explained it all and talked about it, and that dude showed me, and I was very, very uncomfortable. Khord tried to do damage control when he saw that I was uncomfortable. Did Khord ever show you the dark side of the fandom? He showed me the weird shit, like weird art shit, like he had in his comic commissioned about his persona as a feral female cat that's, like, found by other stray cats. It wasn't finished at the time, but he told me how the comic was going to involve his Sona being sexually assaulted by stray male cats. Did Khord ever talk about mersuiting? Yeah, a few times. Not necessarily directed at me, or at least not bold enough to make it clearly directed at me. Actually, he's the reason why I know who Odin Wolf is today. He had pulled up mersuiting videos, apparently just to give me an idea of what it was. I remember it was odd, and I remember doing what I do in an odd situation. Laugh and try to joke about what's making me feel odd. Very odd experience. He turned it off when I asked him to please watch anything else. Do you remember when this happened, by the way? About right before summer started in my 10th year of high school. The interest for him was definitely there for that fetish. He even spoke about trying to get a suit that had a sheath built in. Honestly, I thought he was harmless till the time he exposed himself to me. And then he pushed me into showing himself to him. I kept him at arm's length once I was openly trans, and would generally make excuses to not go over to his house. His knowledge. If a minor feels embarrassed, you proceed to show your full genital area to make them feel okay. That makes no sense. I know that you said that Khord put you around other adults, but did he ever put you around minors and adults? Nope, only adults. But he did mention that he talked to all ages. Then I had him randomly hit me up on Twitter to tell me to unblock him on Facebook. Cause he's lying and it was a lot. A lot I didn't want to be involved in. Much like this situation now, but now I'm ready to talk about it. He did a lot of weird stuff though, like commission art of my lion Sona, then convinced me to make Feral Lion. I remember that he said he requested NSFW of your Sona and Khord's. Is that correct? Yes. Did he ever really try to explain why he would push the use of drugs? He kept trying to say that he liked the way it made me feel. I confidently can say that I 110% believe if I did, he would have taken advantage of me. Here's the thing, Khord, I don't appreciate being lied to. You also claim that the minor was consenting the whole time. But let's be honest here. Your opinion of consent is as weak as tissue paper.
What do you think the age of consent should be across the U.S.?
I would say that it. Wait a minute. Well, honestly, like the way things are, I'm okay with that.
Okay, with what?
What?
With
You didn't answer
the
the
way the
question.
laws are.
Well,
Yeah,
okay,
with the-
what is the
Wait,
current
wait,
law?
wait,
What's the
wait.
current... No, wait, hold on, wait. What's the current law?
Well, yeah, what is it?
It's 18, and that's applying basically to, like, let's say if there's something that happens like across state lines, something along those lines. But that obviously that's a law that is only applied through the states if something is happening within the state, of course. But you know.
Excuse me, that was a non-answer. That was a non-fucking answer. Give me an age.
You kind of dodged the question.
Yeah, you dodged it. Give me an age. 1 through 18.
I'll just say I don't care. I have no opinion.
You don't.
I don't care. I don't care.
Especially after a conversation I had with you in a group chat on June 19th, 2022. In the Khord Kitty discussion group, Khord had popped his head in to start shit with everybody. When asked if a 16 to 17-year-old was able to be responsible as a parent, Khord stated that he doesn't know about the science about the subject, and doesn't care. Which is funny, because he can dedicate hours to watching cat mating videos. And he also stated that a 17-year-old can consent if the laws allow it. Even though he was asked if a 17-year-old can consent in general. Which... Look, I'm gonna go off for a second. Now, while the US consent laws are fucked up on their own terms, Khord, just because a 17-year-old can consent in one state and not others, should give you a clear fucking heads up as a 30-plus-year-old man that maybe what you're doing is vile. It's almost like, maybe people who are 16 to 17 are fucking mature, especially when they're still in high school and just starting their lives. But you were thinking of your dick and not your brain, weren't you? And of course, it's always about legality and not morality of Khord. Another detail I want to bring up is that when I asked Khord when someone was mature mentally and physically, he responded, mentally 25, very quickly. But God forbid I ask physically. He avoided my question and jokingly gave an answer. I even specified that by my question I meant what age are people allowed to have sex if no laws were in place. He still avoided it until I called him out on it. He then answered 120. You know, it's extremely weird when you ask a question, avoid it, and then give a joke answer when the answer is so simple. Yet you refuse to give a proper answer. It almost makes you wonder, doesn't it? Also, he ended up blaming Benji for the reason why he called him a slur, which is rich since Khord can't put 9 and 9 together. Once again, he is dodging questions and discrediting everything against him. He also told all of us that apparently we worship Joshua Moon. When the mentions of the grooming victim were brought up, he ended up downplaying everything. He also said that the 17-year-old was 18, but there's evidence to show that this is a lie. When he was asked for proof about this, he avoided the question entirely and refused to send evidence. He then tried to guilt trip everybody. Also, Khord absolutely has no regrets when it comes to the minor and what he did to them. In fact, he calls his actions the highest morality. And then Khord gives his opinion on consent. You can't take advantage of somebody who can legally consent. Now, Khord will try to say that I mischievously edited this screenshot, when right now I am showing the screenshot in real time. The only reason why you may not see the screenshot as of now is that if you go through the chat logs, it's because Khord deleted it. Also, if you need any further proof that this is what Khord believes, he ended up confirming it on a call with me.
You brought up an interesting point where you claim that like you can't groom somebody if they're legally able to consent.
That's correct.
So yeah, Khord immediately got called out for this, and Khord responded by saying, "I am perfect the way I am," and tried to twist my words against me. When I asked, what if that person no longer consented? Khord explains that he's made perfect choices, and nothing will convince me otherwise ever. And then he left with his tail between his legs. Now, this is the event that really delayed my video, and I apologize. I really wanted to get this video out by like August or September, but honestly, so much shit happened in September that I just had to push this video. Because if I didn't include this, then some stuff probably wouldn't make a lot of sense. On September 10th, Khord had ended up joining the Khord Kitty discussion group, and again, everything went to shit. At first, it was a bit of a slap fight, but in the span of a few hours, it ended up devolving into degeneracy on Khord's end. After screaming and spitting about how we're all Satanists, I'm not joking by the way, it ended up going into a conversation about Khord's opinion on consent. When it was brought up that Khord doesn't know what consent is, in which he talks about whether it was about the state lines, country lines, etc. For California, he put 18. Great job putting 9 and 9 together. Then the conversation melted over to the issue of Khord still being friends with Crowley. He tried to deflect and say that we're untrustworthy. He states that if he was friends with a sex offender, then he would block them. This is about to get really funny in a minute. So he's... Okay, I'm sorry, give me 1 second. So, he sent evidence and, in this video, he doesn't have Growly blocked on Telegram. Remember, he goes to these meets with Growly because of his mental health. Because, you know, hanging out with twice convicted sex offenders apparently does wonders for your mental health. He then sent a lengthy message about how he met Growly, his experience of him, and how the rest of the furry community treats Growly made Khord think that maybe it's okay to hang out with a twice convicted sex offender. Khord talked about lawful morality and whatnot, and when I had brought up the fact that Khord tried to shower with a sexually traumatized victim, he tried to say that he ended up calling us pathetic, even though we brought up the lie that he did in fact commission NSFW while the victim was still a minor, in which Khord had lied again. I think that these screenshots pretty much speak for themselves at this point. Of course, he didn't groom the minor, because we supposedly don't know English. Great defense there, Khord, and there's more evidence that he's transphobic. Nice. And then the conversation spiraled back into the whole consent issue. He admitted the fact that there was a 10-year age gap between him and the 17-year-old, and the question that was brought up was, if the age of consent was 15, would Khord hit on a 15-year-old? In which he said no. I then asked that if he thinks that people are mature by the age of 25, then why did he want to have sex with people under that age? His response was that people start having sex before they're mature. Khord, you were 27! According to your own terms and rules, you wanted to have sex with somebody who was below your maturity age, and you were over it. So, why would Khord try to justify the fact that he's low enough to try and sleep with a 17-year-old? Because it's legal, but not a 15-year-old if it was legal. Because of a dating rule that he never knew, where you should only date people who are half your age plus 7. Which means that if Khord wanted to follow this rule, then he should have been dating somebody who was 20 at the time. But that doesn't excuse the fact that Khord knew what he was doing with the minor was wrong, yet he still pressed on. And then he said that he never had a conversation about relationships with his parents, which explains a lot. He grew up listening to Loveline and Dr. Laura, but that still doesn't excuse the fact that he wanted to assault somebody who was still in high school. But according to Khord, the minor was never uncomfortable around him. And this, oh god, just speaks volumes. What if somebody withdraws consent? Sex needs to stop. And what do you call it when someone says that they don't want to have sexually charged conversations with you anymore? I don't know. And he acts like he's the moral one when he doesn't even know how to realize when somebody no longer wants to engage in sexual conversations with him. He claims that he never learned anything from us and pretty much confesses that he doesn't care about consent. Also, if you have sexually charged conversations with somebody who clearly doesn't want to have sexually charged conversations, then it means that you act with truth, honor, and dignity. But of course, no. Khord's perfect the way he is. Alright, I've been delaying this for long enough. So, whenever Khord is asked to hand over the proof that he didn't groom the minor, he refuses and states that he didn't groom them, and by releasing the logs, he'll dox the minor. So, I ended up getting my hands on the logs, and what was in them was beyond vile. I've carefully gone through these logs and made sure that anything that could dox the victim and put them in danger is blocked out. The victim's messages are blocked out in pink, and Khord's in green. I will try to paraphrase this as best I can while showing the screenshots, but I will warn you that this may be tough to sit through. At this time, Khord was living in New York, Washington Heights to be specific. While that situation was a can of worms itself, that isn't the topic at hand. The events I will be discussing took place between 2014 and 2015. These logs had come from Khord's ex after she had loaned him a laptop for personal use, and took it back once they were divorced. She ended up finding out that Khord was still logged into his Facebook account, in which she discovered the logs. Khord and the victim's conversation start on April 4th, 2014 at 7:14 p.m. On April 5th, we can see that Khord had been cuddling the minor while they were still high, which shows us multiple things. Number 1. Khord had no problem with being physical with somebody 10 years younger than him. Number 2. Now, while the minor had a history of using substances, we will see that Khord doesn't have issue of taking advantage of the situation. On April 13th, Khord offers his home as a place for the minor to live at. Unfortunately for the victim at the time, they were currently dealing with the fact that they were being sexually assaulted at home. They needed a way out. But instead, Khord had decided to try and take advantage of this. The first couple of conversations start off normal enough until Khord introduces sexuality to the mix by stating on April 15th, 2014 at 5:22 p.m. I was wondering, have you ever heard of mutual masturbation? Nope. It's like when two people are masturbating each other. Like, if it was two guys, their hands would be on each other. I don't think I've heard of that one. And, that's odd. Indeed. You should try it. Your GF would love new good ideas. I don't do it though, and, sure. Why not? Indeed. Kitty will teach you all the awful crap I learned over these years. Khord also mentions that talking about sex will corrupt souls, and that's why he pretends to be innocent. I also want to point out that Khord is talking to the minor in almost a childlike fashion, as if almost to lower the guard. Like, Khord, we know how you talk on Twitter. This isn't you, dude. And on the same day at 5:37 p.m., Khord ended up asking if the minor's new relationship was a closed one, before learning that the minor is now single. On the same day at 5:47 p.m., Khord says this: Kitty has been having evil ideas lately. About playing around? But it's one of those things I try to avoid asking about directly. Because it sounds, I don't know, weird. I think it sounds weird, because it's one of those things I only talk about with guys. Well, for future reference, you can say or tell me anything in person or on Facebook. I'm very open-minded. And, who do you want to play around with? Is it me? I just want to make our friendship awkward. That's one of the big reasons I avoid asking. I also don't ask because I know it'd probably be awkward if a 37-year-old tried to play around with me. Khord was attracted to the minor. The conversation then boils down to the minor explaining that sexual experiences scare them. As the conversation gets more NSFW, one detail that Khord says I want to point out is that how he manipulates the minor by stating how they're the only girl whose personality he likes, and how normal the minor is. Grooming is the act of psychologically conditioning an individual into carrying out acts that they would otherwise have personal or moral objections to. This is done with complete disregard to the victim's boundaries and trauma. Another thing, Khord knows that the minor is afraid of men, so he tries to say that he's not like the other guys, or a stereotypical male. Also, there were hints of Khord being shirtless while the minor is around, and the minor possibly being jealous if Khord ever found anyone, which will be important later. Khord also gains pity from the minor multiple times through various topics, such as his past exes, or the fact that he's a guy.
Also, the minor discusses moving into Khord's home, potentially because they're facing issues at home. Khord was trying to take advantage of the situation for his own personal gratification. Okay, this is a bit of a random warning, but the audio may sound off for the rest of the video, mainly because I don't know what happened. Something happened with my mic, and now it's just not working at all, so I apologize if the rest of the video sounds strange. Khord makes it seem like as if he wants to help the minor, but we all know that something sinister lies below the surface. Khord also explains that by playing around, he means oral things. Fucking disgusting. Khord had also wanted to pleasure himself in front of the minor, or at least show it to them on April 16th. You can also see that the age of Khord was lied to the mother, and Khord wanted the minor to sleep over. There's also more confirmation that the minor wasn't even 18 at the time. There's even more manipulation going on here, the minor stating that they don't want to sleep over at Khord's house due to image issues, and Khord responds like a creep, stating that sleeping together naked would be hot. These conversations happen on April 16, 2014. On the same day, he also states that he is attracted to the minor. So, in what way are you attracted to me? Physically and mentally. The minor states that they were even having dreams that Khord calls hot. This happened on the same day as well, though once again, the minor explains their fear of sexual encounters, even though Khord wanted to buy a condom. Also, the minor states that they would want someone who is around their age, but Khord states that the older the men are, the more experienced. Also, if you ever ask Khord what the context of this conversation is, according to him, it was about blowjobs. Like as if, talking about that to somebody who is sexually traumatized makes everything better. On April 17th, Khord had wanted to shower with the minor. Yes, you heard me correctly, folks. A 27-year-old wanted to shower with a 17-year-old. Okay, did you want to shower together? I'm scared of what that'll lead to. Do you think it'll lead to yiff? I promise to not yiff you. Although it'd probably be easier to fap in a shower, cause the cleanup would be easier. I don't mind at all. You can bring your razor here, and I can do the cleanup. I'm mostly suggesting this because it sounds sorta hot. I've done it before. It's really fun and smexy. Don't feel afraid to say no. I'm suggesting the idea, but I'm not forcing it down your throat. I'm sorry. It's not that big of a deal. You can say no. I'm mainly saying this because I'm sorta afraid if I fap for you in my room, my roommates might be there and it'd make it awkward. But in a shower, it'd be less awkward. April 17th became more of a traumatizing day for the minor. Heh, you're right, but still. I have this feeling inside me something bad will happen to me at your house today. and as much as I try, I can't shake the feeling. The minor was scared to go over to Khord's house in fear of him doing something to them. He promises to not have sex with the minor, but the minor is still hesitant to go over. Khord even offered to massage them to help them relax. On April 17th, Khord had flashed a minor and tried to get them to expose themselves. The time frame has happened between 12 and 5. I feel ashamed of myself for how I acted today. Yeah, so it takes longer to really get super duper comfortable with people, and possibly being longer if it's a boy with a scary penis. Aw, that's too bad. You shouldn't feel bad at all. You're a good lion. You didn't do anything wrong. It took me 10 minutes just to show you myself. I was scared to answer any question because of my stupid feelings. Haha, well, it's important to know that I care about your feelings. I mean, I myself do things if they feel right. You do the same thing. The minor also explains that they didn't like Khord's expression. The minor then explained how they were scared of Khord's genitals. They said that they felt like Khord would lose control of himself, and said that they were scared of Khord that day. They then had nightmares about Khord. I also want to point out that Khord asked the minor if they would be comfortable seeing Khord naked in the future, and the minor is obviously uncomfortable. It's sickening to see that Khord was taking advantage of this person in a sense, and no, I don't care if the age of consent in New York was 17. It's the fact that Khord had built a relationship of trust and started smothering it in sexuality. He was attracted to someone who wasn't even 18, somebody who was still in high school and barely starting their life. But yeah, the minor ended up being terrified of Khord and felt guilty for making him sad because he forced them to show themselves. Khord would also try to introduce the minor to different furries, which would also scare them, what the fuck is this? Khord also wanted the minor to keep coming over after the incident, as stated on April 22nd. But also, Khord had tried pressuring the minor into sleeping over at his place on April 29th. Also, I think it's really fucked up how Khord is like, I'm introducing you to the dark side of the fandom. My brother in Christ, you forced a minor to flash themselves for your depraved ass and gave them nightmares, you motherfucker. Khord also acknowledges the fact that he's lying about his age to the minor's mother, and includes even more manipulation as well. There was talk of Khord possibly meeting the minor's mother, but this never happened. On April 27th, which is fucking rich, Khord apparently doesn't feel any attraction to people his own age, but he reads his status of a minor and immediately gets horny. Also on April 28th, Khord gave the minor a used sex toy, which, if it is the same toy, claims that he hasn't washed it in a while.
Ew, you nasty ass bastard!
Throughout April 30th and May 1st, Khord had made up a story where he was hooking up with someone to get a rise out of the minor and make them freak out. Which is absolutely fucking ridiculous on Khord's end. Now, do we know if this person is real or not? No. Mainly because Khord doesn't exactly give a name, or at least he states he doesn't know the name. Plus, he has stated on Kiwi forums before that he hasn't had sex during this time period. On May 2nd, there were more sexually charged conversations between Khord and the minor. The minor states that they'd much prefer someone younger, but Khord states that the older are skilled, but the younger ones are much cuter. Also, a detail I want to point out is that the minor states that they don't want to lose their virginity because they still want to feel like a kid. Now, I'll be completely honest with everyone, this video was supposed to be an 80-minute video talking about Khord, but currently making that big of a video would only delay the topic further as I'd wanted this to be out by November. I can assure you that while we have gone into some vile topics in this video, that is not the entire story. The victim's story isn't over yet, and we haven't even seen the full extent that Khord will go against his victim. But in the next video, I will not only be finishing the story, but also talking about other topics that I think are relevant as well. The intent of this video is to spread awareness for a situation that Khord tries to downplay and hide, even though he's shamelessly shown everyone a side of himself that will forever scorn his image. I hope everyone has a good one and stay safe out there.